Hi, this is Marcel Kuhn from Unthinkable, and I welcome you to Unthinkable Insights with Richard Kimber. Richard Kimber is a creative director. He's a musician, he's an ultra runner, and also family man and dad. We have met in 2007. We did some surfing when I was living in Japan, and we did over the time we did some runs together in the Swiss Alps and also on the island of Hong Kong. And he just completed a crazy challenge, the Hong Kong Four Trail Ultra Challenge, which is a trail race over a distance of 200 miles or 300 kilometers. And he did that in 60 hours without any sleep. And I welcome you to this conversation. And he has some humble perspective on doing the unthinkable, also how it applies to the day-to-day life. I want to inspire people to do the unthinkable, which for me is what is unthinkable is impossible, but as soon as you can think it, you can do it. So it goes beyond what you can imagine. And I think that everyone would profit from, doing more outside of the comfort zone, doing stuff like you're doing. So now we have met in 2007, and I've seen you since then doing so many challenges that are beyond what anyone can imagine. What is your thought about doing the unthinkable?
I mean, it's funny. Obviously, I think one of the reasons you've probably thought of me recently is because I've just done something which some people might think is unthinkable, which is I've just run a very long way without sleeping for 2 nights in a row. And that's relatively remarkable because it's a big achievement in many people's eyes. But when you talk about doing things that are unthinkable, I mean, this is a very highly personalized area. And I think something that's really important for all of us when we're wondering what the biggest challenges in our lives are is trying to really think very personally about the things that we individually find challenging. And so, for example, if you take my recent achievement, if you like, if that's the right word, which was in this case to run almost 200 miles or 300 kilometers through the mountains where I live without sleeping for 3 days. I mean, that's a big deal. But in so many ways, I don't think actually when I was doing it, I ever found it to be nearly as challenging as what I've just been doing this afternoon, which is trying to get my computer to work, which is massively more challenging for me than spending 3 days trying to stay awake and running that whole time. So it's important just to put things in perspective a little bit and not necessarily get too carried away with grand goals that perhaps other people have achieved or that you think somehow make you feel more rewarded or more empowered just because the number's bigger than a number that you've achieved before or the number's bigger than your neighbor's number. I honestly think that I can probably run for 3 days with a smile on my face without any trouble at all. But when it comes to trying to get my computer to work for 30 minutes, wondering why am I still sat in the chair staring at this machine, then I mean that's a whole different world of pain, for somebody like me. So this is quite an important thing to consider, I think, and that's something that we can then try and make a little bit more real about the challenges we face every day, and try and approach for myself, say, the challenge of trying to get my computer to work in the same way that I approached the challenge of trying to run for 3 days in a row.
Can you walk us through what you went through mentally during that race?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very tough event. You have to keep going, obviously, for a day, a night, another day, another night, and then a third day. And for, like we say, and for many people, this is an incredible thing to try and achieve. It doesn't make any sense. It's ultimately ridiculous. It's quite clearly somewhat unnatural to try and keep pushing and keep focused for that length of time. And I mean, for myself, the only way I could ever imagine being able to do it before I did it, and it was in fact the only way I think I was able to do it while I was doing it, was just to try and do it with a smile on my face rather than allow myself to get lost in the difficulty of the challenge, and do the entire thing just feeling very grateful for the fact that I was able to even try and do the entire thing, and never lose sight of that fact, because this was not something that was imposed upon me. This was something that I was curious about trying, and that I was very fortunate to be able to try, because albeit I'd done a lot of hard work to get to that point by training a lot and planning a lot and communicating, I hope, relatively well with the people around me in order for them to be able to support me to do that, which of course means my family and my friends and so on. That all takes a lot of energy and care. But during the process, as long as you remember constantly that this is something that you've chosen to do, that's not been forced upon you, and it's something that you're very, very lucky to even be able to try, whether you succeed or not, it's very hard to get too down or too negative about the experience, however much pain or suffering you might be in. So that was really the fundamental core of, I think, what made me able to complete that challenge. The challenge for me now, though, and this is why I mentioned that in the first answer we were talking about, is to take that same mentality and apply it to something that seems much more trivial, like trying to get your computer to work over a much shorter period of time, and not lose patience or become negative about that process, even though it's actually a much simpler process. But because it's something that I find personally challenging, it ends up being more challenging in a way than, you know, doing something that on paper seems much more difficult, which is in this case, you know, to run for 3 days in a row.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. When I do this Wim Hof method, when I go into the cold water and into the Rhine, and it's maybe 4 degrees Celsius, and for me, it's just walking in, and I feel really at peace in the water. And so for me, I found that that maybe some emotional challenge, having a difficult discussion with someone at work, or with your partner, or whoever, or with your kids, it can be much more unthinkable for me to stay calm when I'm actually going skiing with my 3 kids and with all the gear. How did you get through the difficult stages of this race? And maybe you have some hacks or some strategies to use that also in your private life. What are your hacks to do that?
Well, in this particular race, I mean, just to give anybody who's trying to think about how they can apply this to their own situation, I mean, this was a very big challenge for me. I'd never done anything on this scale before. So, of course, I had to treat it with a lot of respect. You can't assume you're going to be successful before you've tried. You have to hope that you'll be successful and be confident that you'll be successful and back yourself, because in life, generally, nobody else is necessarily going to back you, even if they say they do. When you actually come to take on the challenge, whatever it might be, unless you back yourself, I mean, you really are on your own. So you have to try and at least you know, believe in yourself from the beginning. That's so fundamental. And then of course other people are likely to believe in you, but that's pretty important. And I certainly applied that from the very beginning with regards to this challenge. But then the next thing is, like I say, you have to be humble at the same time to know that you might believe in yourself, but you have to believe in yourself based on some kind of rational evidence that you can put together. It can't all be some spiritual hope. And so in this case, you know, this required for me a great deal of planning and preparation. And it's relatively easy to break that down for an endurance event, which obviously requires a huge amount of training, and not just training, it required a huge amount of strategizing, which was in itself a challenge for me, because as somebody who just loves running in the mountains, when it comes to doing something like this, it might be the love of doing it that gets you through the dark times, but it won't be the love of doing it on its own that makes you actually fundamentally able to complete the challenge. The thing that makes you fundamentally able to complete it is the very clear planning and preparation that you've done by breaking down the distance into smaller chunks, by having a very, very good navigational understanding of the course you're taking on, by having a very strategic plan with regards to your nutrition, the gear that you're taking with you. Everything must be tried and tested. Of course, this is something you can apply to anything in life with regards to your daily work and so on. But it's trying to find that balance point between obsessively preparing such that you can go into the challenge with a huge amount of self-belief and self-confidence because it's based on real preparation, but also just leaving enough space and leaving enough room for the knowledge that however much planning and preparation you do, it won't necessarily all work out. And that's when you need the love and the positivity to take over and carry you through when all of that doesn't work. And I think that was the thing I learned from this experience. I definitely couldn't have done the whole thing on positivity alone, but I also definitely couldn't have done the whole thing on planning and preparation alone. It's just trying to find that balance. And the beauty of these types of challenges is you can never predict where and how that balance point is going to come until you actually do it. Because you might think it will come, for example, 75% of the way through the journey on the basis that your planning will have got you that far. And then it's, that deeper passion and that deeper energy and belief that gets you to the end. That's kind of the cliche, but you don't know that. I mean, you might have a disaster 10% of the way through your journey. And actually the biggest challenge is being mentally strong enough to get over that, knowing that you've still got 90% of the way to go. And so I think that was the thing that was most interesting about this particular endurance event, because it's so long and because it requires you to stay focused for such a long time. It's trying to stay relaxed about that balance point in the way that you generally don't have to when you're doing some kind of challenge that's much, much shorter, because the time is so much shorter, the distance is so much shorter. Whenever that problem occurs, there's still not really that long until the thing is going to be finished. And so you never really get into that, that area of doubt that you inevitably get into when you're doing something that lasts so much longer.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation. For the complete conversation, sign up for my YouTube channel and also check out the website www.unthinkable.mastermind.com. Looking forward to connect to you online or offline.